and welcome. For all of you who are tuned in, you're watching TMH Daily English News. Our headlines for today: 5 civilians dead, 14 wounded due to Eritrea's indiscriminate shelling of Tigrai town in Tigray. The Economist says outsiders bear much of the blame for the failure of Ethiopia's truce, and Sudan sends huge military reinforcements to border within Ethiopia. 5 civilians dead and 14 wounded as a result of Eritrea's indiscriminate and continued shelling of Tigrai town in the Tigray region. Tigray TV reported that Eritrean forces have continued to shell residents of the town of Tigray town and Ganta Afshum district. Managing director of Tigray General Hospital, Abarash Fesaha, told Dimti Wayana that victims of the shelling brought to the hospital cannot get any medical treatment as the hospital has no medical supplies due to the nearly 2-year-old siege and blockade imposed on the region. The Eritrean forces that have been committing genocide since the start of the war on Tigray on the 4th of November of 2020 continue to wreak havoc through blanket shelling of towns and residential villages as well. U.S. Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa confers with the Ethiopian authorities on the urgency of the cessation of hostilities. According to the U.S. State Department, Mike Hammer on the 5th to the 6th of December held talks with the Ethiopian Deputy Prime Minister and the National Security Advisor. Let's take a listen.
Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Mike Hammer, met in Addis Ababa September 5th through 6th with Deputy Prime Minister, with the Foreign Minister, and the National Security Advisor to discuss the urgency of immediate cessation of hostilities and going to peace talks under the African Union's auspices. Special Envoy Hammer delivered the same message to the TPLF chairman, and we have condemned the TPLF offensive outside of Tigray, the Ethiopian government's airstrikes and ground offensive, and Eritrea's re-entry into the conflict. In the coming days, as part of the ongoing diplomatic effort, Assistant Secretary for African Affairs Molly Fee, Special Envoy Hammer, and other U.S. diplomats will be consulting with the African Union, as well as key actors in the region, the UN, the EU, and UK envoys. Our goal is to mobilize diplomatic efforts to press the government and the TPLF to halt immediately their military offensives and for Eritrea to withdraw to its borders. There is no military solution to this conflict. The only path forward is for the parties to pursue a negotiated settlement through peace talks. The Ethiopian people have suffered tremendously from this conflict. As the largest donor, the U.S. is committed to continuing to provide its life-saving humanitarian assistance to those in need affected by the resumption of conflict. It is important to note that we remain concerned by the negative impact of conflict and drought in other regions of Ethiopia. Let me restate again that the U.S. commitment to Ethiopia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and our conviction that only through a lasting peace will the Ethiopian people have an opportunity to achieve the prosperity they desire and deserve.
As the international community continues to just show merely support and concern on this ongoing conflict, The Economist says outsiders bear much of the blame for the failure of Ethiopia's truce. Timnit Bairu presents this report based on an article published by The Economist under the title, "Why This Ethiopia Ceasefire Failed."
The article indicated that a 5-month stalemate lulled some observers into believing Ethiopia's civil war, which counts ethnic cleansing and famine among its horrors, was over. On August 24th, such delusions were shattered, said The Economist. Clashes between the Ethiopian army and forces from Tigray erupted around Kopo, a border town in the Amhara region to the south of Tigray. Fighting has since spread across multiple fronts, including places deep into Amhara. Drones have struck Tigray, and neighboring Eritrea has again entered the fray, shelling towns and coordinating offensives with its Ethiopian allies. Aid trucks trickled into Tigray after months of deliberate blockade of food aid. Telecoms, banking services, and electricity also remained switched off. Aid operations have been crippled. The Tigray leadership had long warned that they would resort to force if Abiy Ahmed, the prime minister, did not loosen the chokehold. They also insisted on the return of disputed territory annexed by regional forces in Amhara at the start of the war before entering any talks. Both sides readied their forces for more fighting. Outsiders bear much of the blame, stated The Economist. adding that mediation led by the African Union and supported by America and the EU has been dismal. During preliminary talks in June, the Ethiopian government agreed to restore basic services such as telecoms and banking to Tigray. But Western diplomats, distracted by the war in Ukraine, have put little pressure on Abiy to keep his word. His government says that it is committed to talks without preconditions, but also claims it needs security guarantees from the Tigray forces before basic services can resume. The government of Tigray describes this as blackmail. According to The Economist, despite Abiy's notional commitment to talks, in private, many Ethiopian officials say there can be no deal with the Tigray forces. The Tigray forces say their goal is simply to force Abiy to the negotiating table, but it is likely to want to make significant military gains before agreeing to talk itself. That explains the strategic importance of the nearby border with Sudan, where fighting has reportedly broken out in recent days. If the Tigrayans win control of the border, they may be in a position to resupply themselves. The article noted that the involvement of Eritrea, an ally of Abiy's against Tigray, is more ominous, making the war much harder to end.
The resumption of hostilities has continued to exacerbate the hindrance of aid entering into the region, and OSHA also said the hostilities in the north continue to impact vulnerable people and the delivery of humanitarian assistance. According to OSHA's daily noon briefings, tens of thousands of people in parts of Tigray, Amhara, and Afar regions are reportedly being displaced by fighting and insecurity. There have been no humanitarian convoy movement into the Tigray region since the 23rd of August, preventing deliveries of humanitarian supplies such as additional fertilizer for the agricultural season. Twice weekly, UN humanitarian aid services flights between Addis Ababa and Mekelle City have also been halted since the 25th of August as well. Sudan sends huge military reinforcements to the border of Ethiopia. Sudanese authorities announced on Tuesday the deployment of huge military reinforcements to Hamdiat and Kassala as clashes intensify between the Ethiopian army and the Tigray forces near Sudan's eastern border. Organizations operating near the Sudanese-Ethiopian border have also been ordered to vacate the area immediately. According to Sudan Tribune, the Sudanese government has urged the humanitarian aid organizations to evacuate their reception centers at Hamdiat that serve Ethiopian refugees over heightened safety concerns brought by these new clashes. Aid agencies present in the area include Medicine Sans Frontiers, Plan Sudan, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, Muslim Aid, and the Child Welfare Council. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.